Hey, I'm actually posting today's video thanks to one of the viewers of the channel, Cody. I shot this video some time ago actually when we replaced the ARS rack with the Rhino rack system, and it was to deal with the issue under the cowl. And I never posted the video because I didn't think anybody would really care. But Cody reached out with a really good question on this, and it troubled me too some time ago. And I did find a solution to the problem. I'm gonna post this video now for the rest of you guys. And Cody, thanks for reaching out. Hey, beautiful people. So this is just gonna be a quick video today on how we went from this back to this. So we had the adventure rack system, we took that off and we switched over to the Rhino rack system, but we had to get the cowl pieces back to stock. I want to show you how we did that for very little money and not having to buy new pieces for the Jeep. So you guys may remember I used to have the adventure rack systems rack on top of the Jeep, and we recently swapped that out for the Rhino rack system and the backbone for a variety of reasons. But one of the things that was part of that was a section of the rack that used to mount to the cowl area here. And you can see I actually have different bolts in here than what it normally comes with. This is a stainless bolt that I put in here to hold this cowl piece on right now, because we actually have something different going on in here based on the modifications we had to do to this corner piece on both sides to be able to mount the adventure rack systems rack. But let me get this pulled off of here real quick and I'll show you what we're dealing with and what I'm doing to remove the support pieces in there. So as you can see, this is actually the mounting bracket for the adventure rack systems. And the modifications that you make to support this is, one, you have to drill a hole down in underneath here to be able to put a nutsert in to screw the bottom of the bracket in. And over here you can see we've actually drilled out the area where the original bolts went in to hold the cowl piece on in both locations. The other thing you have to do is you have to hone out the top of the cowl in this location to about a 1/2 inch so that the support piece for the bracket can then come up and you can mount the rack to it. And the last piece, which is kind of important, is take a note here in the cowl. We actually end up trimming out a portion of the cowl for that to slide up in there into that location, because you can't do that and have the rack on at the same time. So now that we've made those modifications, we need to find a way to get back to stock. So what I'm doing is a little interesting, but let me go ahead and remove this bracket first and I'll show you how I'm addressing this. Hey guys, if you find this information useful or you like the video, do me a favor, hit the like button and subscribe. It would help me out a bunch. All right, before we go any further, before I actually pull this out, you may be asking yourself, hey Jeff, why not just leave it in there? It looked fine the way it was, right? Well, here's why. This bracket, if I ever wanted to sell the adventure rack systems rack, this is an important part of the mounting of that rack system. And you may be able to go to Metal Cloak and actually just get these parts, but it'd be nice if I could just go ahead and sell it all with everything it needed minus the nutsert, which you can get just about anywhere. So I'm really pulling this out for two reasons. One is I'd like to be able to have this available in case I sell the other rack system, and two, they're not light. It's actually a pretty good chunk of steel in here that is just unnecessary because I'm just holding on a plastic cowl piece here. So let me get this out of here and I'll show you what I'm doing to get this back to as close to stock as possible without buying a new cowl piece and a new corner piece. So now, as you can see, the Adventure X Systems is an incredibly robust mounting system here. There's 3 holes going through here that are clamped with the 2 main bracket pieces, and then 1 big nutsert that's inserted here into, believe it or not, an existing hole that you drill out and put that in, and that is really what holds the main bracket in. And then, of course, the holes that you hog out here to a 1/2 inch are bigger now. So this is the stock bolt holes that hold the cowl on, as well as the corner piece inside. And then, of course, these were drilled out so that the bolts that go into the actual mounting system for the rack can bolt to the bracket itself. So we're going to be trying to put this back to stock, and what I'm going to be doing to do that is, first I'm going to go ahead and put some primer and paint in these holes so we don't have any rust issues in the future. Second, I'm going to go ahead and drill these holes out to a 7/16 drill bit, and I'm going to be putting nutserts in there because this used to be a threaded hole for the cowl piece to mount on when the Jeep was stock. So I want to get that back to just a threaded hole. So I'll be drilling those out and putting nutserts in. So by the way, if you're asking yourself what kind of paint I'm using here, it's a primer and a paint, both. It comes from a company called Scratches Happen, and you can order this online. They will actually match the color paint for the vehicle you have, and they have a whole website that you can go on, and this is an Earl Grey Jeep. So this is my primer, and then I actually have a spray can of the Earl Grey from the Mopar Jeep color. And I use that really to paint some custom parts like my diff covers and things like that to match the Jeep, but I also use it for, obviously, if you ever need to do touch-up, this stuff is good. And it comes 3 pieces. You get the primer, you get the color, and then you also get a clear coat. And then it has instructions of how many coats each to use for different repair jobs. So the reason I want to go ahead and spray paint in these holes, you may be asking yourself, well, but you're going to put a nutsert in there, right? I am, but I don't want moisture causing rust issues under my cowl in the future. So I'm going to be sure to coat everything in a nice coat of primer and paint, even though it's in a hole. All right, so essentially what we're going to do is we're going to do 2 coats of the primer in each of the holes, and then 3 coats of the paint, and then we'll go ahead and insert our nutserts. And that way, and it's about 15 to 20 minutes at 70-ish degrees for this to dry between coats. So I'll speed this up and we'll get to the nutserts. Okay, so got paint on everything here, and remember, it's not supposed to look pretty. It's just there to protect from corrosion. We don't want to get any rust in here in the future. If you're not familiar with what a nutsert is, this is what it looks like. And you can see it's got a serrated edge here. This is actually an M8 120 nutsert, so that gives you a metric bolt. And you can buy a tool for these that allows you to screw it on and pop it in and just squeeze it, and it puts it in. It's kind of an expensive tool, or you can go to the parts store and buy one that looks like this for about $7, $8. And what that allows you to do is take and screw the nutsert in onto the tool itself, insert the nutsert into the hole, with our nice painted hole, and now what I can do is tighten that up with the help of a 14mm wrench and a socket, and that will actually seat the nutsert in the hole. Now the one thing you want to be able to do is make sure that that's in there bottomed out really, really good, so you got it all the way in. We don't want that sticking out and creating a shoulder for what we're bolting on to sit in. But that will actually expand in the hole with those serrations and give us a nice little set of threads. Just like that. to mount our stock bolts back into. Oops. As you can see, now I've got a nice threaded hole in here to be able to screw my stock bolt back into. All right, there you have it, guys. So now we've got a nice threaded hole to put our stock bolts in, and we've covered everything else where there could be any possible corrosion with paint. Quick note, I actually put these nutserts in while the second coat of paint is still a little wet and tacky. And the reason for that is I don't want to put that in there and have it scratch through already cured paint and leave a space for corrosion to occur. So just a little tip. I'm not sure if that works, but in my head it does. Don't judge me here. But one of the things I'm actually doing is, because I had to cut out that section of the cowl piece, the corner cowl piece that normally was mounting to this bolt through the top of the center cowl piece, I need something to take up the gap in there. And what I'm doing is I'm using some hose, clear hose with the right ID and OD for that slot in the cowl piece to slip right over this nice and tightly and grab it. And I'm cutting pieces to fit over the stock bolt that goes back down through the cowl. And what I do is I just cut it to the length to fit that shoulder, and that's what I'm using. And I'll show you how that works. Okay, so as you can see, taking a piece of the hose, cut it to length to fit right on top of that shoulder, and we'll screw this right down into the cowl. That rubber hose works really good because it actually kind of grips the hole that I'm screwing it through here. All right, so if we remember our corner piece here, we've got our notches that were made to accommodate the Adventure Rack Systems rack. We've already got our rubber installed on the two bolts that come down through the top cowl, and we've got our nutserts installed here for the stock bolts. Now what we'll do is slide this on nice and tight right underneath the cowl, right over those onto the rubber hose that's in there. That should slide on nice and snug, like so. And now we have our two fresh nutserts to put our stock bolts in. And those don't need to be super tight either. By the way, I put a little drop of Loctite on these just because I don't want them spinning out. I'm not going to tighten them super tight. They don't need to be. It's just plastic cowl. But there we have it. Looks just like stock and back to normal. Now I fully suspect most people, if they install the Adventure Rack Systems rack, are probably never going to remove it. And if they do, I've seen some people remove it and they leave the hoop that goes over the windshield and even the catwalk on, and just roll with it. We removed the rack for reasons of gas mileage, aerodynamics, weight, and things like that. We're trying to reduce the weight of the Jeep because when we load it up for overlanding, man, we end up with a lot of weight in the Jeep with the dogs and us and everything we need to pack. This was just yet another thing that was kind of bugging me for a while because I still had the brackets under there. If I wanted to sell the old rack system, I couldn't. Now I can. I've got all the parts, the bolts, and everything all together. And if somebody wants to take that away, they can. But yeah, in case you ever did want to go back from the Adventure Rack system back to stock and get things bolted back in, this is one way to do it without having to spend the money to buy new parts for your Jeep.